Hey guys, welcome to the video. My name is Mark and today we're going to be replacing the master cylinder on the 190D. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I've been working on the brakes quite a bit, and I was reconnecting one of the brake lines up here to the master cylinder and ended up stripping out the threads in the master cylinder. So that's what led me to actually replace it. And one thing I learned once pulling the old one out is that it was leaking down into the brake booster. I wasn't sure if the actual cylinder was bad or not, but once taking it off, I can see fluid down there, and I know that's a good thing that I ended up replacing this, because not only was one of the threads stripped, but also it was leaking from the back side. Okay guys, so I know there's a little bit of brake fluid down in the master cylinder, and this might be a little bit too much hose, but I'm gonna go ahead and try using this vacuum pump to draw up any of the brake fluid out of the master cylinder. Okay guys, so one thing to note when you're buying a new master cylinder is that you have to reuse the reservoir, which isn't a problem. You get these new rubber plugs here, so you're fine. You just have to pop this one out. I had to put the old one in the vise and then take a flat-headed screwdriver and kind of pry this out, but being careful not to break the plastic. So I'm just gonna reinsert the reservoir into the new master cylinder, and then we're gonna try bench bleeding it. Okay, both plugs are seated. They feel nice and secure. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill this up so we can start bench bleeding. And these little plugs, these little yellow plugs, there's one on each side, and then this feeds the back brakes. So this one's plugged as well. The little chintzy, I don't know if this will actually hold the fluid back. We'll see. It didn't come with a proper bleeding kit, so I don't think these are actually gonna hold any fluid back. I've got these ones, and if you watched a previous video of mine, I had pulled these off of my old brake lines. I snapped the brake lines in the back of the car, and so I just used these, cut them off at maybe an inch, and then crimp them in the vise. That way I could use this as a plug, so I could screw this in and it would keep the brake fluid. That way I could plug up all the holes and bench bleed it that way. So what I ended up doing was putting the reservoir back onto the new master cylinder and then plugging the holes with these plugs. Now again, I made these plugs because I found out that these were simply just little caps just for shipping, just to keep dirt and stuff out. These would never actually hold the fluid back to bleed. So I've seen this method online before where if you just plug the holes and then pump the brake, it'll bubble the air out of the system. Okay, so notice as I pump the brake back and forth, notice this fluid level here. You can see some markings here. I think this is the edge of one part of the reservoir, and then there's another marking here. I don't know what this compartment is, but watch this fluid level as I pump the brakes. So this is where I was noticing bubbles. As I was pumping the brakes, for a while there would be no bubbles, but then I would continue to pump, and maybe 7 pumps later, you get a couple bubbles coming out. And then I'd do it a couple more times and you get some more bubbles. So I just continued to do this for quite some time before I thought that all of the air was out of the system. I know some methods have an adapter that feeds the fluid back into the reservoir, but I don't have that, and it didn't come with the kit. Or it didn't come with a new master cylinder. So what I ended up doing was just plugging the holes, pumping the brakes, and right now it's pretty stiff. I was using this and it's pretty stiff. So I'm gonna keep doing this until I see no more bubbles, and then I'm gonna install this on the car. Now, when I go to hook up the new brake lines, guaranteed we're gonna have some brake fluid coming out of here, maybe pressurized since I've been pumping so much. I'll just have to make sure to keep this topped off and to just disconnect these lines quickly and do them just one at a time and make sure I don't get any air in the actual master cylinder. But that just kind of briefly explains how I bench bled this using this plug off method. So I was able to get everything all connected back together. This actually went in without a problem. Now, when I unscrewed the original plugs that I used to bleed the actual master cylinder, nothing actually came out. It wasn't pressurized. I wasn't sure. I've only done one other master cylinder, and that was about 5 years ago on a totally different vehicle. So I forget how that process went, but in regards to this, I bled it with those plugs and had no issues once I unscrewed those plugs. Now, once I unscrewed them, brake fluid would come out, but it didn't come spewing out. I had plenty of time to get the new screws in there, and everything is situated. So everything's good, everything's hooked back up. I'm noticing now that I actually have to hook up this, the brake booster, this line. I'll do that in a minute. But for the master cylinder, everything's back. Everything's plugged back in. We're good to go. It's topped off both the front and the back reservoirs. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do now is actually go and take my back right tire off and start vacuum bleeding from that side. Now, because there's complete air in the lines, there's no fluid, I may have to start pumping the brake pedal first to get fluid down there and then start vacuum bleeding. I'm gonna try both ways just to see how things go.